mean, we've all grown up uh, hearing about advertising as an aspirational field and as an aspirational activity for a lot of careers and brands and business owners and business or other aspiring entrepreneurs. They want to do advertising, but when it comes to when you kind of sit back and think about how did products like Google Pay grow, how did products like Cred grow, how did products like Dropbox grow, PayPal, they all do advertising, but advertising is not the channel that drives the number one growth for them, or it's not the channel that grows the company. It's not the primary channel. So what's happening in these companies, Ishtar?
Right. So
do you have any other examples of such companies?
Sure, I have like a bunch of examples, but I'll start with part A of your question, which is on advertising itself, where you see a lot of glitz, you see a lot of glamour, you see a lot of script writers today and famous directors who started off in advertising, and a lot of that had to do with TV advertising, for instance. We spoke last time about how when the medium fundamentally changes, the nature of advertising itself changes along with that. And if advertising is like 1% of your GDP, and it has been 1% of global GDP for roughly around 1% for over 100 years. So there's a lot of stability in how much money gets dedicated towards what we know and what we call advertising. But what we've clearly seen with a lot of successful companies now is that they do a lot of advertising, but they don't actually call it advertising. And coming to your point on PayPal, Gmail.
No, I want to kind of dig further into what you just said here. I want you to make it further. I want you to elucidate further. What do you mean when a lot of companies don't call it advertising but end up advertising? What do you mean?
I'll give you an example. If you go to a Kirana store, and I used this example last time, if you see Coke refrigerators, that's advertising, even though it doesn't count as advertising spend. It's what we ideally call marketing, right? When you go and see Tide or Lay's packets instead of Bingo or Balaji chips, you see that because someone has cut a deal with the retailer to make sure that the product is within your eyesight, is the first thing that you see within the store. The entire concept of the checkout aisle, where you buy bubblegum, where you buy razors and things like that, all of that is advertising, but is almost like disguised as advertising.
Okay, got it.
So when the shopkeeper gives you pulse instead of like 2 rupees and change, yeah, he's making a nice margin on giving you that candy, but it's also advertising. He or she is incentivized to give you that pulse, so that's almost like surrogate or this very advertising, but we don't really call it advertising. And so we can see clear parallels in the digital world also, where we see examples of this happening, and some of them include what you were talking about. But let's talk about Pulse, because Pulse itself is a great example. You'll read news stories about how Pulse became a 100 crore brand without advertising in the first place. It made a killer product. How many of you have heard of Pulse? I mean, people can respond in the chat. And the story around Pulse is they started with a great product. Very, very Indian flavors. But the PR around it and almost this viral sensation because of its taste helped propel it as this massive brand and actually become a challenger brands to a lot of candies like Hajmola and the rest. So this is a fantastic example of advertising that is almost disguised as advertising.
Okay, super cool. So again, I think when you said Pulse, and this says the brand, I think the parent brand is Pass, and then you said Hajmola. I think that's Nostalgia OP. Maybe we can have Nostalgia OP in the chat. But let's keep the direction sort of tech focused, because even when I'm sure we can find similar case studies even in the pre-tech or pre-internet era. But let's look at you've done a teardown of how Cred did what they did.
Yeah.
Kunal Shah app, because I think Cred these days is now just synonymous with Kunal Shah, irrespective of the fact, or despite the fact that he doesn't mention Cred a lot in his public experiences. Apparently, that's what he had to say in one of his latest interviews. So, what's happening with Cred? What's happening with Dropbox? What's happening with Calendly, Slack? There are so many, all of these brands, and I don't think how I adopted a Slack or a Calendly or a Dropbox or Google Pay or Uber for that matter. I don't think I adopted these apps uh, by seeing their advertisement. Like it didn't happen that a Facebook ad showed up and then I clicked on that ad and signed up on the app. What really happened here?
Yeah, so how many people actually know the story behind why Amazon is called Amazon? And it's a really fun story. So Amazon was supposed to be named Relentless.com, and it was supposed to be called Relentless. And if you actually type, no, A to Z is not the answer, but if someone types Relentless.com, it actually takes you to Amazon.com.
I'm gonna do
And Amazon was, you should type it in the address bar. But it was called Amazon because Yahoo's directory was alphabetical in order. And the Yahoo directory was the biggest source of traffic on the internet 25 years ago when Amazon started. And so they really wanted to be in the first section, like almost like the A list. And that's why he decided to go ahead with the name Amazon. So yeah, you get a sense of how like viral marketing and discovery was already built into the very name of the company. They decided to name it Amazon because of a hack, which would get people to organically find out about the service. It's not advertising. It's great. We can call it great marketing, but it was very insightful for them to do it back in the day. The same way Dropbox started with giving you online storage space when it was really, really expensive back in the day. And by inviting other people, by helping Dropbox build that network, they would give you something that you really wanted in exchange without forcing you to go out of your way or digest something you really didn't want to digest. The same with Google. You got an invite, the more people, the more number of people you invited, you had possibly a chance to. I actually forgot how Gmail started out, but it was almost like referral marketing that we associate with
Google
in our
Gmail,
world.
Referral case study. Oh, Dropbox grew 3,900% with a simple referral program. Okay, great.
There you go. Look at the name of the website. It's called
Viral Loops.
So
then,
almost like reinforcing marketing schemes that sort of don't cost the company any actual advertising dollars. Of course, it's expensive to run. Even Google Pay's referral program is very, very expensive to run, but they choose to do that because they're betting on the product, right? I think a lot of this comes down to confidence in your product itself. You understand that it is something that people want, and you're able to build that product, and you bet on the fact that people will share this product with their friends and family. Another example of Amazon doing this really well is their affiliate program, where they give people who link to products on Amazon 2 to 3%. It's something that Walmart simply cannot compete with. It's something Target cannot compete with. It's something Macy's cannot compete with. So what you see most often in this viral marketing, and I'm so sorry, I'm going to use a jargon, which is asymmetric competition. They're competing on a completely different level than anyone else in the market. If there's one thing you want to understand about building great products or achieving some kind of viral loop, it's got to do with the concept of asymmetric competition.
Okay, do you have anything that Do you have anything that can visualize this?
I can look for something and I can bump up the link in the
I
chat.
think let's do it this way. When I'm talking about something, maybe I can share my screen, and when you're talking about a concept, maybe you can find a way to visualize it, because that's when it happens more symmetrically.
All right, sure.
I'm stopping the share. Okay,
Yeah.
all yours.
Okay. So this is a decent example. Just
You're not sharing your screen yet.
hang on. Something Apple does really, really well whenever it comes out with a new product category, it's not really competing with um, other brands. It's actually trying to aggregate features from multiple other brands and position itself in a completely differentiated way.
Okay. So are we talking about category creation here?
Think about it. All the brands that we talk about, whether we talk about GPay, Google Pay, whether we talk about Tinder, whether we talk about Dropbox, they were
Correct.
almost the first movers in their categories.
They were the category creators.
Yeah, they built a category from scratch in many
Right.
cases.
Right.
So even the iPod, it's not like MP3 players did not exist. Smartphones, it's not like smartphones did not exist. It's not like, of course, Apple spends a fortune on advertising. That's a different story. But it comes down to building a great product. And how do you actually start thinking about great products? You start with the concept of asymmetric competition.
Okay. So something funny that I'm seeing here is iRiver, becomes the Paytm, and Apple is the Google Pay. So from Paytm's perspective,
Yeah,
Google Pay is a very strong competitor, but from Google Pay's perspective, Paytm is nowhere.
yeah, that's a fantastic example. And yes, someone in the chat says OnePlus grew just like that. Bang on. Fantastic example. Both highly relevant to the Indian market. Your example of Paytm versus Google Pay, right? Google did not start out with a wallet.
Correct.
Google did not start out with every feature under the sun, did not start with mobile recharges, etc. While they worked with other providers for it, they entered the market when the market for recharges was like people were already familiar with the idea of recharging their phones through their phones. It's not a novel concept, neither was it how they positioned the product. Yes, it's a reason to believe in the service, but by no means was it the marquee feature as such. The marquee feature was simplicity. The marquee feature was making payments really simple. And they competed by integrating UPI, which was government backed at the time.
Correct.
It still
Okay.
is.
Super cool. Now, I want to chip in here, and I want to kind of give direction to where we're headed. Just a minute. You guys can see my screen. So, okay, the blatant and upfront answer to how to grow without advertising. I'll just write it here. I'll open a notepad. How do I remove this? Hide floating meeting controls. Okay. Let me open a notepad. Sorry guys, I had to change my bases at the last moment, so that I don't have my usual pen and board setup. So how to grow without advertising? There is a concept, that's doing the rounds lately, and that has everything to do with growth loops. What is growth loops? Growth loops is nothing but viral loops. I mean, people know it from via different names. Viral loops is nothing but a flywheel, is nothing but or kind of leads to network effects, and somewhere community also plays a part. Now, I think I've written the code for this session. This is what we're going to talk about. So, how do you grow without advertising? You grow without advertising by referrals, growth loop. I should have written, viral/referral loops. What you basically do is you build a program that is something like viral loop. if they are able to visualize it, it runs something like COVID, basically. What happens here is someone gets your thing and clicks the thing, shares it, and then they share it. Someone else sees it. So uh, it basically becomes viral. And what is virality? I think there's a chart that can show virality. That okay, this is thing. So one person for every one person, let's say for every one person who spreads the word of mouth, he gets three more people into the product. And if you are able to if you're able to maintain that viral coefficient, what is that viral coefficient? uh, Viral coefficient is a number that over experiments across multiple iterations that you've done, a single coefficient number that you've been able to arrive at, that signifies how many shares does every person do when they step into your product. This is something we tried to replicate in the Avalon Meta app as well. There was a compulsory share. So if you, in this example, what they've assumed is their viral coefficient is 3. For every one person that enters their loop, he ends up inviting 3 people. So here it becomes viral because this person inviting 3, this person is inviting 3, this person is inviting 3. We have total of 9 people here. 9 would invite further 3. So we have 27 people here. Here, this is how COVID spread, I would say. This is how coronavirus spread. This is virality. So this is the way, I mean, word of mouth and referral marketing is something that we've heard for so long. And across businesses, there's a problem that people don't give enough weightage to virality because ads seem simpler. Advertising seems simpler. Advertising seems predictable. Advertising seems, more forecastable because Upar wale, your managers and the management, they will always demand, something that works for sure, and that will guarantee me. Like for Facebook, it is so easy to build a system that people call it funnels. It's so easy to build a funnel that where you spend 10 rupees and you get 30 rupees, so that way you can base your entire company's forecast. Okay, so this month I'll spend 10 rupees and I'll get 30 rupees. Next month I'll kind of put 5 rupees extra, so I'll spend 15 rupees and I'll get 45 rupees. So that is how a lot of companies are growing. However, you never grow to a trajectory like this with the ads. Let me show you that trajectory. That trajectory is the exponential trajectory. The trajectory that Dropbox the trajectory that Dropbox experience, the trajectory that a lot of products experience, and the trajectory that is usually referred to as virality. What the kind of growth Uber experience. So the problem is the small businessmen, obviously. What do you think teams on big companies do? The growth teams on Uber, the growth teams on Amazon, the growth teams on on Facebook, Eventbrite, Tinder, companies like these. Do you think they sit back and run Facebook ads? Do you think that's the job of these guys? No, these guys are kind of subtle product managers. What they do is they build a part inside the product. They get their hands dirty and work with the developers. They work with the engineering team, and they get their hands dirty into the product and build a part of the product that builds this virality or growth loop, or so many words I wrote here: growth loop, virality, or enables network effects, or builds this flywheel, and builds a community around it. So Ishtar, now I'm going to throw this onto you. Can you define what a flywheel is, and how does a flywheel work?
Sure. So hopefully a bunch of people in the chat are familiar with this idea of compounding interest, which Albert Einstein once called the eighth wonder of the world. Okay, you can look at this rice grain and chess problem to visualize compounding interest. Now, the first and second examples, the ones that you're looking at, if you could just select one of them, I can.
All yours.
Sure. Okay. So it's imagine like a growth wheel or a growth flywheel as something that starts out really, really small, is very community driven. You have very engaged set of users. You figured out who it's really, really made for. And this community of users is incentivized to share it with more people like them, who will find more people like them, who will find more people like them. It almost sounds like propagandist, but
I think what you just spoke about is this. I mean, this is a very childish spin on what you said, but this is what it is. This is what it looks like.
This is almost like a three-dimensional version of any of the other flywheels that it's almost like a spiral that goes upwards rather than something that's just static. Imagine it to be more like a spiral, and that's what makes it this reinforcing advantage that a lot of product-led companies have. If you think about, let's continue using the example of, let's use the example of Facebook, for example. Sorry, I'm using example too much. But Facebook early on figured out that its growth problem could be solved by a very, very simple hack, which is getting someone to make 7 friends on Facebook would indicate that they would continue using Facebook going forward. So everything that Facebook did in the first 5 to 7 years was to make sure that people would add other people on the network. And so that's what led to Facebook's insane growth early on. If you had more friends, that would make the network more valuable. It would make you so much more inclined to share your information. So imagine this flywheel as being a reinforcing trait of product-led companies who want to grow without advertising. And this is, we see this all the time. A lot of companies also perish because they aren't able to advertise early on. I won't stick to those examples, but it's a great way to know that you're on to something successful by seeing the rate of referral of your existing users.
Okay, super interesting. Now, I think before we move to the second part of this thing, should we take certain questions so that everyone's on board with us? Guys, you can write your question in the Q&A box. Ishtat, are you able to see the questions?
Yeah. Yes, Chamath does share his insights. Chamath, yep, written fantastic pieces on this. Avalon community is growing like this. Yes, I told Abhinav this and he disagreed with me for some reason. What is Dropbox? Dropbox is, imagine if Google Drive was made by just one company, that'd be Dropbox, or iCloud Drive, or Microsoft OneDrive. Those are.
So let me kind of break down Dropbox. Dropbox is Google Drive. Basically, Google Drive before Google Drive came into being. Google Drive did cause tangible and significant harm to Dropbox, but we're talking about I don't know, pre 2010 or some time around 2010 era where Google Drive wasn't there and cloud storage was still was a new thing, was an in thing in the market. That's when Dropbox came into being. Now, when you look at the product like Dropbox, let me go further down. Startup lesson. Do we need anything here? No. When you look at a product like Dropbox, the thing is, when you share something on Dropbox, the other person, in order to open it, he will have to, get onto Dropbox, because I mean, if you share something with me on Google Drive, I will have to sign in via my Gmail to access your document that you're sharing with me, and that was the fundamental of Dropbox forever. So they had inherent virality built into the product, and this is something that's there. I spoke with InstaMojo's CEO, I think sometime last year or last year. So they also have inherent virality built into the product. As in InstaMojo, what does InstaMojo do? It is a payment link. They're basically a URL, and they allow you to spread that URL wherever you wanna spread it, just to collect payments. So let's say Ishtat owes me $100 and I want $100 from Ishtat, and InstaMojo came like much before Google Pay and UPI came into being. InstaMojo always had a business perspective to it, or business angle to it. They weren't for peer-to-peer money transfer. So let's say I've sold an ebook to Ishtar, and Ishtar is one among the 100 folks that I'm selling my ebook to. So Ishtar now has to give me $200, and I don't want to go through the hassle of setting up a Razorpay and setting up a PayU and doing all that. InstaMojo allows me to directly access or accept payments in my account. All I need to do is I need to send a link to Ishtar, and Ishtar will pay via that link. Now what happens is InstaMojo has details of Ishtar. Ishtar is on InstaMojo, and somewhere down the line, if Ishtar chooses to do a freelance gig or something, and he has to accept a business payment online and doesn't want to go through the hassle of Razorpay or PayU or PayPal. In fact, InstaMojo came before PayPal came to India. So InstaMojo is the first choice in Ishtar's brain. This is something that happened with Dropbox as well. Dropbox came into the cloud storage area much before anyone else came to the cloud storage area. And when I had to give something to Ishtar and I didn't have a pen drive readily available to me back then, I would share it on Dropbox with Ishtar. Ishtar will be on Dropbox. So this is a trend that these guys always, the Dropbox team had inherent virality built on the product. Now what they did, in order to speed it up, so certain people are sharing things amongst themselves. How do I make it grow further fast? What they did is they incentivized incentivized both sides. They were like, okay, you send something on Dropbox to Ishtar and get 16 GB of free space. And initially it used to be like, okay, you send something to Ishtar. If Ishtar comes on Dropbox, he gets 2 GB, you get 2 GB. A lot of people are doing it, this dual-sided referral program. So this is what Dropbox did. This was their loop. Basically, I brought Ishtar on Dropbox, then Ishtar liked using Dropbox, then he shared it, he shared a file with his girlfriend, with his boss, invited like 3 more people onto Dropbox. That's how Dropbox kind of grew. Purely an incentive-based referral program. Dropbox used a viral loop on steroids. Now, someone picked the entire referral program and, productized it as viral loop under viralloop.com, and they're selling a SaaS that allows you to, build a viral loop within your product. The problem was, I'll tell you why, the focus of the entire industry, and especially these digital marketers, is on digital marketing, is on running ads. The ads as in, just like Facebook ads chala do, Google ads chala do, let's do some SEO, SEM, because it gives sustainability, it gives predictability, but people are failing to realize, okay, referral, to be honest, word of mouth was never a sustained strategy. I think in the pre-internet era, when there wasn't much data, there wasn't much tracking available. When I was running a mom and pop store, when I was selling shoes, for fuck's sake, and I sell really nice shoes. People who use my shoes tell other people about it. I don't have a way to track how many people told other people about my shoe. But with the internet, I have that predictability. I have that sustainability, and I can with all everything that's happening, I can draw binary trees to the nth extent and be like, okay, cool. So I brought Ishtar in June. By September, Ishtar has brought 10 people on Dropbox or 10 people on my thing. So how do I generate more Ishtars? And hence, for the very first time, it's been happening for a long time, but for a lot of you guys who are averse to these kind of strategies, for the very first time, we should understand that referral / viral loop / growth loop / flywheel / network effect, which is nothing but word of mouth, is a scalable like hell. Like, when virality kicks in, then it kicks in like mad. It trumps any linear advertising. So this is scalable, this is sustainable, and you can predict it as well by reverse engineering what's happened in the past, by reverse engineering what a lot of growth teams are doing in the biggest companies. How do you think Airbnb grew, dude? Do you think Airbnb ran ads worth of billions of dollars to acquire its first users? No, that's not what happened.
Yeah, totally on board, and fantastic examples from your end. I'd love to take up look. I'm looking at some of the questions in the chat also. Think of like, and we'll use an Indian example because is it okay if I go outside the realm of tech? just to
Sure.
give people how these viral loops actually exist in everyday life around us.
Sure.
Uh,
I would love it if you could visualize as well. So I'm going to stop sharing.
it's a pretty straightforward example. I think someone asked the example of a Kirana store, but I'll give you something
Okay.
much more natural, I think, for us. The newspaper, and you want to understand how Times of India became so huge in the country, dominating like state after state, even if they didn't have a presence in those states. So Times of India did not spend on advertising when they reached a new state. What they actually did was focus a whole lot on distribution. What they did in certain cities was to go and tell people that if you take Times of India right now, we will give it to you at a special discounted price of only rupees 99. That's when there was almost like a mafiosi type of scene.
Okay, Ishaq, I just suddenly in the middle of this I got hooked to what you were saying, but I
Yeah.
didn't follow it from the beginning. I need you to repeat it and go slightly slower. So, how did Times of India employ a viral loop in the pre-internet era?
Yeah, so Times of India, of course, like now needs no introduction. But when they first start, the newspaper business is a very entrenched business. It has to do a lot with the connections that you have, the kinds of distributor relationships that you have, who ultimately fulfill the demand that customers have for reading their daily news. We see hawkers on the road. They were probably they probably get the supply from a distributor. So this distributorship model was huge in the newspaper industry, and you typically sacrifice a portion of your margin to these distributors. Times of India wanted to go direct to customer, right? And whatever reservations you might have against their journalism, today it is the most successful English daily in the country. And not too long ago, they had a very aggressive strategy for making their way into important markets like Delhi, like Tamil Nadu, so on and so forth. In Chennai specifically, and also in Delhi, what they did was they had their own staff who were responsible for sales. They were responsible for signing up customers. And so, what they went to customers with was a very simple proposition. They did no advertising on other newspapers, they didn't put up billboards, they didn't put up TV ads. They just said, you can get our newspaper for rupees 99. Yeah. And that was such an irresistible deal. It was
99 rupees.
that's it for a year.
Okay.
Yeah, versus the what
Probably $300 a year or a month.
700 $800 a year that you would have to spend on any one newspaper, right? So typical household possibly gets two newspapers, maybe in English and in a vernacular language, maybe a business daily, so on and so forth. But these guys actually started out with rupees 99 for your daily news. That's it. Ultimately, they were able to eliminate the competition by being so aggressive in their pricing. It's possibly the only daily that a lot of people needed because it had everything in one newspaper versus a specialization that you could possibly find in other newspapers. And so, even if they weren't Chennai based, if they weren't known for their coverage about Chennai, they were able to acquire customers in Chennai through an aggressive pricing strategy that almost had an eye popping offer that people would share with folks in their neighborhood. If you were
Okay, Ishtar, help me understand. Okay, when you talk about it this way, okay, 99 rupees mein pura yearly subscription they gave away, and and it was super competitive. Like people would try, and they obviously had a better experience because they were going direct to consumer and not having distributors because distributors have their own lochas in the middle. So tell me, this is very much like a geo strategy. You're spreading pipelines. You're building a base by getting as big a community in your with you, and then figuring out how to monetize it. Now, but where's the viral loop here?
The viral loop is you immediately start seeing people using reading Times of India, whether you're at the park. It's the default option when you go to an office and see, you're waiting in the lobby and the only newspaper you end up seeing is Times of India rather than other newspapers. You get a taste of the product and then you're like, yeah, why not? Someone came to my house and wanted to give me a year-long subscription for 99 rupees. So they were initiating this sort of loop which by default eliminated their competition, and we can call this sales promotion, which is our entire thesis that a lot of advertising actually goes unsaid. And this Times of India example was a very local one to illustrate how it can work in our neighborhoods and in our lives and even in the physical world.
Okay, super interesting. So basically, what I'm able to take from this is, even if I wasn't a keen or avid reader of newspapers, but when presented with a deal like 99 rupees for the entire year, I wouldn't mind.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so it was a Jio effect that I think Jio saw a very similar trajectory. It didn't matter if I was on Vodafone or Airtel. I wouldn't mind putting the second SIM as Jio, and then over a year or 2 years, that second SIM became my primary SIM.
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally. Aggressive pricing is also something that can initiate growth loops in the physical world, right? Like we also want to see parallels of this kind of work in real life. So this is another example of that.
Okay, fair enough. Now I have something open right in front of me that I want to just quickly run through. Is the Pinterest model. How Pinterest, now growth loops don't always have to be Dropbox like, they don't always have to work like a Dropbox model is what I think a Swiggy or a Box8 is employing now, that okay, you get someone else on board, we'll give you $250 ka coupon, usko bhi will give $250 ka coupon. I don't think that's the only way you can do this. Pinterest, look at Pinterest. What do you do in Pinterest? There's a new user. He activates, by consuming content, and then he saves or repins some content. That content gets indexed on search engines, and search engines bring more people who stay because of the content. They do some activity with the content. Search engine indexes that content. This is not just Pinterest. This is Quora. This is Reddit. These communities have, if you look at Quora and Reddit, their primary source of user acquisition is search engine indexing. All of their questions are being indexed as all of their questions and answers, everything there is being indexed on Google. And if I search for a question, I land on the platform, I become a returning user, then I might as well answer a few questions. Then it becomes it attracts more and more people. And then the more it happens, this flywheel runs very fast. And when this thing goes round and round, and the faster it runs, the greater the compounded effect of growth that you bring in. Now the question is, how do you look at it? From a framework point of view. Okay, I understand that Dropbox did it. I understand that Reddit did it. Pinterest did it. Quora did it. How do you think of it? How can you employ? Because there is no one size fits all approach to growth loops. But what is the generic fundamental model of a growth loop or a viral loop or a referral program that can work for me as a sustained strategy? So this is what we come to. In order to framework or make it convert into a framework, this is what we come to. There has to be a user input. A new or returning user has to he should enter the product. Then he has to take a certain action. The action should lead to an output that brings in the next user. So in Dropbox's cases, what's happening is you start using Dropbox, but then you host a file on Dropbox. And why do you host it? More often than not, it's to transfer. And you transfer it to the person, that is your output. That output requires the other person to come back to Dropbox. So this is the Dropbox's loop. Similar case with Reddit, similar case with Quora, similar case with Pinterest. Now, I want to. So these are the two examples that I had to share. I want to understand, Ishtar, how does Amazon's flywheel work here or growth loop work here?
Sure, if you could just open that and I can start, explaining each part.
Want me to open Amazon flywheel, the typical? Okay, just.
Someone had a question on AWS. I thought that was a fantastic question, even though they advertise now. And while we're on the subject of Amazon, Amazon has this fantastic philosophy of being the first and best customer of the services that they create.
Repeat that. Say that again. Stress it further.
So what it means is that whenever they're creating a brand new service, they will offer it to other folks, but they will make sure that they are utilizing a significant percentage of the capacity that they have built. Now, use the example of what Amazon is doing right now, which is building the shipping massive logistics service, which is what India Post would do, which is what Gati would do, which is what in the US UPS and FedEx and the rest would do. Why does it make sense for Amazon to invest so much money on something that other people can do just as well? It's because Amazon can start offering the service to someone else after they have already realized economies of scale of offering it to themselves. So even with AWS, they had a requirement of insane cloud compute capacity. And they realized that they were the best. They needed so much capacity that they actually couldn't go to someone else to get that kind of capacity. So they built it themselves. And they realized that other people might want this cloud computing capacity going forward as well. Today, Netflix is hosted on AWS. Instagram started on AWS. All other services so many services we know and love started on AWS because Amazon was able to achieve economies of scale early on by being the first and best customer of AWS. Today, AWS feels the need to advertise because other companies, think Microsoft, think Google, they have also realized that they need so much cloud computing capacity that they can offer what they've already built to other people. So today it's about Amazon meaningfully differentiating itself in terms of either services or in terms of cost. And so they feel the need to advertise and tell people why they're better than the competition. When they started out, very, very few people had their eye on cloud computing and they were able to capture that entire market.
Dude, they're still the category leaders.
They are the category leaders. They have a lot of competition, but yes.
Cool. Now, I think you want to go through the flywheel that applies to the core, not the core Amazon business, I would say, not anymore, but the origin, the very first Amazon business, the e-commerce business.
Sure. So the crux of Amazon's success was also making the best use of this online channel, right? Whenever you think about Flipkart, whenever you think about Amazon, you think of this concept of the infinite shelf. They are not restricted by space, and so they can store as many things as they want. The origin story of Amazon involved them stuffing their basements with books, and they were able to buy these obscure books that no one could actually buy online and offer them at lower cost because they were buying it wholesale. Right. So that's where it begins. Amazon's flywheel begins with this lower cost structure, which is being able to hoard a lot of products that people consider obscure or people don't want, or stores wouldn't stock because people wouldn't come in asking for it. Right. So that already is asymmetric competition. Amazon was able to list way more titles than any physical bookstore could, which allows them to create this lower cost structure by default. And then as a result of that, consumers have lower prices. They're able to set lower prices, and they're able to set lower prices dynamically, depending on where you are. And after that, as a result of lower prices, customers are really happy. Now, customer experience doesn't talk about the product experience or the user interface specifically. Customers want the lowest prices. That's what leads to Walmart's success. That's what leads to Reliance's success in many cases. And so customer experience actually involves so many other things. It involves logistics and it involves taxation. How much tax are you paying on the product? Um, how quickly can you get it in your hands, etc., etc. So lower prices actually is great for the customers, and why Amazon considers itself the most customer centric company in the world. Allow those lower prices allow them to retain a customer as well. Because of this superior customer experience, people tell other people that you should get the stuff that you're really looking for and can't find in your neighborhood on Amazon.com. That leads to a lot of site traffic. Because of site traffic, a lot of sellers want to come on to Amazon because that's where the attention already is. No one wants to start a store around paper clips. No one wants to, you need to create a stationery store. But what if you're a brand that only deals in paper clips? You might want to list on Amazon because people are looking for many different categories, many different departments, and no one departmental store can fulfill all of those things. And so as a result of that, Amazon has the biggest, widest selection. When they tell you they have 40,000 products or 2 lakh products or dikhao, it's because this flywheel allows them to advertise the fact that they have a great selection. So they advertise only one part of this, which is the selection or possibly the lower prices. But because of these two variables, it allows them to build a business that is very hard to compete with.
Beautiful. I think a consequence of all of these things, the flywheel and the growth loop, and again I'll go back to the notepad. Growth loop, viral loop, flywheel, is network effects, and network effects has a lot to do with the community. But I think today might be bombarding. I mean, we might be bombarding the audience with too much if we get into network effects today, and we also wanted to keep the session succinct. So maybe I can again pull Ishtarth for another session, and meanwhile, for you guys to catch up on what we just spoke about, we'll Navina can drop the recording in the community on the server, and then we'll have Ishtarth again, and we'll dive into the actionables of how do you deploy a flywheel for yourself, how a lot of other companies are doing it, how what is network effects, and why is network effect all the hype. If you just go and Google network effects for a bit, you will find it. So the internet positions network effects as the secret sauce behind all the unicorns that were ever made, especially the Ubers and the Amazon and the Flipkarts and whatnot. Andreessen Horowitz also writes about it. They're as good as Y Combinator. But I think you guys should take your time and digest what you've just been thrown at, and we'll be back sometime next week or the next week, depends on Ishtarth's schedule. We both gotta go. Ishtarth 9:04.
Yeah, I'm holding my meeting for another couple of minutes, possibly with like parting thoughts.
Perfect. Please.
No, go for it. I mean, so many amazing questions from people. I'd love to answer them. I'll be around on Discord later on. If we could save this chat and I could answer individually, happy to do that.
Navina, can you arrange for that? Can we have a snapshot of those questions, and then we can chat in the marketing voice channel whenever Ishtarth's, by the way, in our community now, so he can hop on the marketing channel and take certain questions over voice as well.
Totally.
All right, cool. I think this was a great session. Thank you, folks, for showing up. I'm going to take your leave. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we'll be back sometime soon. Until then, good night. See you. Tara.
Thank you so much, guys. Pleasure.
Bye.